All right, welcome back to our simulcast Powers on Sports podcast and Florida Football Insiders podcast. Next up, we are going to preview the Miami Hurricanes, year 2 of Mario Cristobal, and we are going to talk to no better person that can give us a full breakdown of the Hurricanes, all things Miami sports, longtime legend in the Miami sports media world, Mr. Joe Zagacki. Been the longtime play-by-play voice of the Canes football and basketball, and again, a fixture in South Florida sports. If you're down in that area, you know Joe very well. So welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. Ready to talk about the Hurricanes.
That's right. Before we get to the Hurricanes, I got to ask you two Miami sports scene questions. Give us a sense of the hype about Messi being in Miami and the whole, just the whirlwind of what that's been the last month or so.
Well, obviously he's been magical. Messi has been magical. Everybody's talking about it. It has created more interest in soccer in this area than probably ever before. What I do find funny about it is everybody talks about Miami, 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 and they play the games in Fort Lauderdale. So I feel like I live in Broward County, not too far from Fort Lauderdale, that Fort Lauderdale is getting the short end of the stick. But he certainly has turned this community upside down.
One more question before we get to the Canes football side. You had the pleasure of being a part of the Final Four run for the basketball team this year.
Yeah.
First ever Final Four run for Larinaga and the Hurricanes. Just give us a sense of the excitement and just the thrill of the Canes making a Final Four.
Yeah, for me personally, it was one of the greatest months of my broadcast career. Probably the most intense 3 or 4 weeks that I've ever had. High level games right to the Final Four, and just being at the Final Four personally was it's the only event that I've never been to or done or broadcast. So I felt like I was able to check that off my list. But to follow the team and be able to narrate and deliver the soundtrack of that season was really, really special. It was thrilling. It meant a lot to the program. I think in the long run is going to change the program. I think a little bit because now players are going to look at the University of Miami and say, yeah, hey, they play basketball too. It's not just a football school. They legitimately have a really good basketball program. But it was just so exciting, so passionate, and just a great thrill ride. Really something that I will never forget.
Yeah, it was a great run for sure. And obviously you had the other added storyline that you had FAU right up the road from you guys that were in it too. And just for that South Florida market, just a great.
The funny thing is, sorry to interrupt, but FAU game was right before our game.
Yeah.
And the way the broadcast positions are set up at the Final Four, you're kind of below the floor, and you're not center court because that goes to CBS and network radio. So you're right about the free throw line, maybe a little bit below the free throw line, and just below the floor. Your eyes are like even with the floor. And the last shot of the game for San Diego State, I probably could have helped FAU. I could have tackled the San Diego State shooter. He was right in front of me, and I thought, man, if there was ever a time to have a call, that would, as luck would have had it, that would have been a great spot, because in the broadcast world now, you're kind of getting pushed farther and farther away from the action. It just so happened for that game-winning shot was probably 3 feet right in front of me. Of course, it wasn't my game. I wasn't calling it, but it was right smack in front of me. I felt so bad for FAU because they had such a great story as well.
No, you're right. It was a dream season for both South Florida schools for sure. So, all right, let's get to the football side of things with the Hurricanes. Obviously, Mario Cristobal, year 2, year 1, 5-7 overall record, 3-5 in the ACC. Not kind of what they wanted to start off the era with, but again, Mario comes in. He's been known as a great recruiter, and you're seeing the fruits of that labor here last year and obviously well into this year. Give us a sense of just Mario's reacclimation into South Florida. How's that gone from just reintegrating himself into the community? Obviously, we know he played there back in the glory days. Talk about that relationship with Mario and the community.
I think he's got a very good relationship with the community. He's from here. He understands this community. He came back to make this program prominent. I think the where the wires all got crossed was after Miami made that transition from Manny Diaz to Mario. Manny Diaz's team, when he lost his job, they had lost that season, I don't know, 3 or 4 games by a couple of points, lost to Virginia on a field goal that hit off the upright, lost to North Carolina, going in for the game winning score again. Balls intercepted at the line of scrimmage, lose to Florida State up there on a 4th and 14 play. You if you get off the field, you win that game. So that's 3 games right there.
Right.
And I think people thought, well, here comes Mario with his great coaching staff. We ought to be able to improve on those 3 games we lost with Manny. That's coaching, right? And then it didn't go that way. And Van Dyke got hurt. The offensive line got hurt. I'm not sure that either scheme was the right scheme for the defense or the offense. So there wasn't a connection there. And then I think Mario, he looks at the big picture. You lose a couple of games along the way here. He looks at the big picture and says, "Oh, wait a minute. You, I understand we should be beating the likes of Virginia and Duke, or hell, Middle Tennessee, but you didn't bring me here just to win those games. You brought me here to compete with Alabama and Georgia. Well, then they lose those games to Duke and everything, and fans are like, well, hell, we can't beat Duke, and you're talking about Georgia." So he finally comes out and says, listen, I'm going to say what no one else has had the balls to say, which is we need to rebuild this program. Nobody has said that. It's always been for the last 20 years, oh, Miami's back. Miami's going to be back. We're going to get close to being back. Well, when you have the things that have happened to this program, the amount of attrition, the amount of coaching change, the amount of getting beat on recruiting,
Right.
throw in a scandal, you've dug yourself a gigantic ditch. You can't get out of that by saying, oh, we're one player away, we're one scheme away, we're one coach away. So finally, when this thing just hit rock bottom last year, he said, look, I'm here, I'm tough, I can take it. Fly your airplanes, do whatever you want, I can take it. So I think people are warming up to the fact, like, okay, we see what his vision is. Now some aren't. Some are just gonna, go to that default position of, well, we're Miami, we should win. But that doesn't work anymore. We're Florida, we're gonna win, doesn't work.
Right.
We're Texas, we're gonna win, doesn't work. We're USC, we're gonna win, not working. Alabama, Georgia, look at what the NFL says. Georgia, the last 2 or 3 years, like 30 players in the NFL.
Right.
Recruiting, managing your roster, that's what wins. That's what he's doing. And now he's building it the way he knows how, which is size and speed. Size in the trenches, speed on the perimeter. It's not a complete project right now. It's a work in progress, but I can finally see this vision, this blueprint.
You mentioned kind of the chemistry wasn't there last year. He changes both coordinators, brings in Shannon Dawson from Houston, Lance Guidry from Marshall to as far as offensive and defensive coordinators. Is that a key part of this element? Is the coaching and the cohesion of a system to fit kind of what you want to do offensively? I know Mario's our offensive line guy, or he wants to play a physical brand of football. Do you think these 2 new hires are going to fit that mold better?
Yeah, I think they're more in line with what Miami had when they, were successful in the 80s and 90s. Just go to Jimmy Johnson, right? He follows Howard Schnellenberger. He comes here from Oklahoma State. At that time, nobody really knew who Jimmy Johnson was. He was an up and coming coach from the Big 8, I guess, at the time.
Right.
Big 12 now, Big 16. At the time, the Big 8. And I guess my point is this: guys like Dawson and Guidry are still on the way up, and in their position as coaches at Marshall and at Houston, they were fighting every single day for their job. It's like these high school coaches in Texas who battle every day because it means so much You
Right.
lose the game, you're out, right? So Dawson and Guidry are creative. They're finding ways to be successful. I thought it was interesting that Guidry looked at the defense and said, "Well, I want to see what they do well, what's good for them, what they like doing." And we're kind of back to what Manny Diaz was doing defensively a little bit, and that is attacking the quarterback, being aggressive, giving the offense a lot to think about, trying to mess with the offensive line, the opponent's blocking policy. Guidry, though, is more in line with we got to stop the run. I think Manny, fair or unfair, stopping the run was something you did on the way to the quarterback. So maybe both guys, high risk defense. When you play a high risk defense, you're going to pay the price for that, right? You're going to make some big plays, but be prepared
To give up
to,
some.
to give something up. You can't defend everything. You got to make a choice. People think you can defend everything. You can't. So then offensively, Miami was abysmal last year, 95th in rushing, 96th in scoring, 86th in the red zone, 23 points a game for the University of Miami. Shannon Dawson, his offense last year at Houston, 40 or more points 4 times, 30 or more points 10 times.
Right.
And Miami ought to score 30 or more points every time out, right? With the kind of athletes available to Miami,
Yes.
they should. And the way football is played today, 23 points at the University of Miami. I think I could come up with 23 points a game. Miami should average 30 points a game the way college football is played today. Now, defending is a whole different story. I feel bad for defensive coordinators. And I think Shannon Dawson has got that right attitude, mentality. I hate using that word swagger, but he's got this confidence. And I think he's just in line with the way the game is played today. And I'm not so sure that I hate to say this, but maybe last year some of those guys looked at their talent and went, well, hey, I don't have anybody here that could start for, Michigan or Alabama. All right, I get that. Right. That's why you're here. You got to figure out what to do with this group. And I think that's where Dawson and Guidry are. They understand that Miami probably is not elite yet. And if you're not elite, then what do you got to do? You got to figure out how to make it hard on the other team. That's always been the beauty of Jim Larinaga. We get really good talent in Miami in basketball, probably not what Duke and Carolina get, but he figures out a style that makes it hard on the other guys. And Guidry and Dawson, I think also, like Coach L, look at it and say, okay, I know what the weakness is going to be, what the kryptonite is for the opposition, and we're going to attack it. And so I think that's why they will be better this year.
And to your point on offense, Miami only had one game where they scored over 24 against a Power 5 team, and 5 times they were held to 17 or less last year. That's just not a winning formula. You can't win that way in today's college football.
I mean, I don't care who's standing. Newt Rockne can be on the sidelines. You're not going to win in today's football with that kind of production.
Looking at the guys that are back on offense, obviously Tyler Van Dyke is a key. We all thought he was going to have a good year last year, didn't play as well. This guy's an NFL prospect, a lot of talent. Give me what he needs to do better in this new system to be able to make Miami a viable contender in the ACC.
Stay healthy. Can't play with a bad shoulder. So stay upright and trust his protection and trust the offense. And I think it's incumbent on Dawson to understand about Van Dyke, and I think he does. I hope he does. At least this is my opinion. Maybe I'm the one that's wrong. I'm just a broadcaster, so I throw out opinions like everybody else. I think Van Dyke is best when you get him into a groove. It's like a pitcher who can't get into the strike zone. Well, if he's not throwing strikes and doesn't have command, you got to figure out how to get him to throw strikes. In Van Dyke's case, he's a little bit streaky. So sometimes I think the evidence would show with Rhett Lashley 2 years ago, we go fast. We get the ball in his hands and we throw it to somebody who's open. We go fast. We hit open receivers. Not everything has to be a deep over route for Van Dyke. We get him going. We get him some confidence. We get him going. And so I think Miami's trying to manage this fine line between going fast like they did a couple years ago and then also grinding up the opponent, because Mario wants to be physical and run the football.
Right.
So Dawson, 2 years ago at Houston, they were number 6 in the country in time of possession. So I think he understands that balance. To answer your question, Van Dyke's got to stay healthy. He's got the 5 best linemen in front of him that he's had since he's been here. All that being said, when he plays against Miami of Ohio, it will be his 18th start. That's all. 18. Yep. He hasn't gone a full season.
Right.
But if you look at his sample size in those 18, you look at what he did in 2021 when he had 6 straight 300-yard games. He had 7 games of 3 touchdowns or more.
Right.
And then last year, there was a small glimpse when they went back to, let's speed it up for him. North Carolina, Virginia Tech. North Carolina, 496. Virginia Tech, 342. Then he gets hurt. So I think where he feels comfortable, what his sweet spot is. They got to get him there.
Give us a couple names of some dynamic offensive players. I know they got a good running backs room, but give me a couple of names of some guys who they expect to be really productive at the skill positions on offense.
Well, I'm going to change that to a little bit of the guys they need.
Okay.
I don't know that they are as dynamic as they probably need to be more dynamic, but you got to work with what you have.
Okay.
So they have safety in numbers. They've got different combinations. You have Colby Young, who's 6'5", so you throw him the ball in the red zone, he can go up and snatch it. The guy they can't do without is Restrepo, Xavier Restrepo. I don't know if I would call him dynamic, but I would call him dependable. And I would say, he got hurt last year, and that was a real thorn in Van Dyke's side. He's a player that Van Dyke has such confidence in and great chemistry with. So does Restrepo beat you deep? I don't know. Maybe he does. Does he out jump people? Probably not. But what he does, he just outworks everybody. Throw him the ball, he's going to die for it. He's going to make a great attempt. And most likely he'll catch it. But he makes acrobatic plays. It might be a catch and fall down, but he's going to catch it. Maybe he sneaks behind the defense. If he does, and you lay it out for him, he's going to catch it. Going to be great on third downs. Going to be a great decoy. They can't do without him. The guys they need to elevate their games that could be dynamic: Jacoby George, Bashard Smith. Guys that are dynamic but are too young are Ray Joseph and Robbie Washington. At least I think they're too. We'll see. Ray Joseph was great in the spring, been great in camp. My concern with young players like that, when you throw them in and you need to use them a lot, is they get banged up, because they're going to be not physically where everybody else is. But Ray Joseph can be a game changer, and so can Robbie Washington.
You're listening to Joe Zagacki, the voice of the Miami Hurricanes, both football and basketball. We're just giving you a preview of the 2023 Hurricanes. An interesting stat that I researched in Miami last year: turnover margin was huge. Since 2017, the Canes are 1-17 in games with 2+ turnovers. Last year, they were 0-6 in games with 2+ turnovers, and 5-1 when they didn't turn it over twice. How much of an emphasis is possessing the ball and ball security?
It's funny that you bring that up, because what's odd about Miami is they were I think it's -5 over the season for turnovers. They were -5. The defense took the ball away 20 times, right? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, not as good as 2001. People want to be 2001. 2001, they took it away 48 times. But the offense gave it away 25.
Right.
So to your point, that's 2 a game. You're not going to win. So big emphasis on the offense protecting the ball. I think a lot of that, again, was there was no consistency at quarterback. So there were more interceptions because you played 3 quarterbacks. Jake Garcia, not with the program anymore. I don't know what he had for interceptions, but he had a lot. Van Dyke had 5. Jakari Brown had a couple. Garcia seemed like he threw a lot and threw them in really a bad spot. Like pick sixes coming off the goal line. So it wasn't only the turnovers, it was also where they happened. Often it was I mean, it's one thing to play sudden change, but I mean, we were throwing pick sixes or the other team is getting the ball at the 10-yard line. You're not going to win doing that. I would say clean up the turnovers, but also they were number 106 in the nation in penalties. And maybe some of that was frustration. Some of that's probably the lousy refereeing in the ACC. I had to get my opinion. It's always been bad. They just over officiate in this league. I think the SEC looks at the ACC and says, "Are you guys playing flag football in that league?" They just always over officiate games. And then, but that being said, especially on defense, Miami's gets way too many, personal foul penalties, 15-yard penalties that extend drives. They lost to Texas A&M last year, I think by a touchdown, whatever it was, 13-6, 16-6, whatever the score was. They played pretty good defense.
Yep.
A&M hit them. Ioannis Smith had like a 40-yard catch, 30-yard catch. James Williams gets called for a personal foul. He picked him up, grabbed him, bear hugged him, and slammed him down. In the SEC, not a penalty. ACC officials in that game against an SEC team, penalty.
Right.
15 yards. Now, you can't do that. 15 yards. He's got him gathered in, lay him down. He slams him down. Next play, no, 2 plays later, touchdown.
Right.
So you can't shoot yourself in the foot like that. 106th in the nation in penalties. You can't have that. My point in the ACC, though, I don't know what it was last year, but a couple of years ago, 14 teams in the ACC, 10 were in the bottom 50 of most penalized in the country. How do you have a conference where 10 of your teams are the worst penalized teams in the country?
Yeah, you're right. No, that's a great point. Every league officiates their games differently, and
they should just blow up, a league officiating and just make it nationwide.
That's a valid point as well. A couple more things, I'll get you out of here. Let's look at the schedule a little bit. Obviously, a huge game early with Texas A&M coming to Miami. Then in October, you got a gauntlet. You go to North Carolina. You got Clemson. Early November, go to NC State and Florida State in back-to-back weeks. Talk about the importance of getting off to that good start in that Texas A&M game.
A&M, they underachieved, and there's a lot of pressure on them. So Jimbo goes with a play calling savant and Bobby Petrino.
Right.
Game is here. A&M, I mean, I have their depth chart right in front of me. I'm already up to that game, and I just can't believe the amount of talent on their team and how they lost 6 games in a row last year is beyond me. Now, what they did is they got rid of all the people they didn't want, and they kept all the guys that they wanted.
Right.
And every guy in that roster is like a 5-star guy. They lost A-Chain with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
They replaced him with Reuben Owens, 5-star #1 running back in the country. And they do that at every position. And I look at their defensive line, they've got they've got nine guys that are either 4 or 5-star guy on their defensive line. Their linebackers, their safety, Damani Richardson, who's throwing out of our game last year, is a SEC, all SEC player. He's back. Chappelle is back. Bryce Anderson's back. Anderson was a 5-star player. Gilbert's back. Their entire secondary is back. So that's a monumental challenge for Miami. To answer your question, I'll answer it this way. I saw this stat the other day. The last 5 years against ACC opponents, Miami is 11-9 at home, 12-9 on the road. First of all, 11-9 at home against the ACC, and that's 3rd best in the conference. Another reason it shows you why the ACC really struggles. Clemson's undefeated at home in the last 5 years. Miami's 11-9. They didn't lose 9 home games at home
in 20 years.
15 or 20 years. So they've got to reestablish a home field advantage, and it's not the stadium. In Texas A&M, not an ACC team, but you got to win these games at home.
Right.
And then to your point, if you want to play for the championship in the ACC, the way the schedule came out, everybody that's picked in front of Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Carolina, NC State, they're all in Miami's schedule. If they win those games, they'll play for the ACC championship. So then that gets me to Miami's got a lot of players that want to play in the NFL, and I just tell those guys, well, you think you're an NFL player? Go prove it. You're playing
Go
it.
win the
Teams
game.
that have NFL players on it.
Yeah.
Don't dodge it. You okay? Is it you want to go to the NFL? All right, what? You want to be a free agent, or you want to be in the 6th round, 7th round, or do you want to show the NFL, you're worthy of first, second, or third round? Well, go do it against Clemson or North Carolina or Florida State.
Right. No, you make
the way
a great point. Carolina's got a big quarterback. Clemson's got a big quarterback. Florida State's got expectations this year. So the schedule's right in front of them if they can perform. And remember, the ACC takes the top 2 teams now for division. So there's opportunity there that you can lose a game and still make it to the title game.
Yeah. And look, Carolina's had Miami's number. They got to go beat Carolina. I think it's 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row, Carolina has beaten Miami.
Wow.
And, they crushed them a couple of times. I think 3 or 4 of the lost up there on a 4th down and 15 play. Miami, Manny Diaz's first year, come all the way back. They've got him beat. Need one play on defense.
Right.
Can't get it. Next year, Carolina comes down here and runs for 8,000 yards, put up 700 yards on the ground. Couldn't stop them. Go to Carolina 2 years ago, marching in for the game-winning score. Ball's deflected at the line of scrimmage, interception, game over. Last year, Van Dyke throws for almost 500 yards, and you lose the game.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Got to find a way to beat, right?
Right.
Beat them.
And obviously with Florida State's resurgence under Mike Norvell, you want to see that Miami-Florida State rivalry reemerge. Right. Are you hearing anything about realignment? Obviously, Miami, Florida State have been talked about. Is Miami entrenched in the ACC, or is this a team that potentially could be on the move in 6 months to a year?
Nothing will surprise me, Jason. I think that the Miami brand, I feel like there are a certain amount of people in and around the ACC that are trying to hold on for dear life with the ACC. And then I think there are a whole bunch of people outside of the league that say, we got to get rid of this league so that we can get to what we really want, which is X amount of teams in a smaller amount. Really, I guess what they want is the NFL and the NBA, right?
Right.
And they want that on Fox and ESPN, and how that plays out, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Some of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me beyond football,
right?
Which really nobody's thinking about,
right.
And I understand that. It's very peculiar, but I think Miami's going to be in play. I think, and they have to be in play because the way it's shaping up. Some major schools, I think, could be left out. Look, Cal and Stanford right now are out on the outside unless they come into the ACC, and there's no guarantee the ACC survives after that. And there are teams inside the ACC. There's no guarantee that they get absorbed by whatever this game is that the networks are playing. Which is, we want these great matchups all the time. Problem with that is, on paper, this Big Ten thing looks great, or Big 12, whatever they're going to call the Big 10, Big 20. Right. Okay, so Michigan is going to play
USC,
Michigan State, all USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, all those teams, right? So we get to week 7, and we got this great matchup of Michigan
Rutgers and Miami.
No, but you do it the other way.
Oh, right.
Michigan and USC.
Right.
Oh, they played in the Rose Bowl for so many years. Well, guess what? Now they're both 4-4.
Right.
Because they're playing, killing each other inside their conference.
Right.
I don't know, but I think Miami's going to be in play. They want to be in play. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up in the Big Ten There are a lot of rumors about Big Ten wants Miami and North Carolina. Maybe the SEC takes Florida State and Clemson,
Right.
and then we're done. I don't know.
All right, tell the fans where they can find your broadcast if they don't have a Miami radio affiliate in their town. Where can they listen to all the great broadcasts? Who's your analyst?
My partner is Don Bailey Jr.
Okay,
he was the center of the from 79 to 82. Jim Kelly was his quarterback. Mark Richt was his roommate. Don was the captain of those teams, and really was part of the teams that transformed the University of Miami. Sure. So he's my partner. We've got Josh Darrow, who is my sideline reporter. And outside of, anywhere in the world, you can listen on the Odyssey app, odyssey.com, or the Odyssey app, AUDACY, Odyssey. And it's free, the free Odyssey app. And, some colleges are stuck behind a paywall. We are not. And, of course, satellite radio, also Sirius satellite radio.
That's awesome. And Joe's been on the call. Is this year 22 or 23?
This would be my 35th year on the broadcast.
Okay.
And my 22nd as play-by-play.
Okay. 22nd at play-by 35. Again, Joe is a fixture in Miami sports. If you've lived in that area, he's been on TV. He's done everything in the Miami sports media. A true legend in that market. Last thing, give me a quick thought on the Dolphins. You expect them to contend for the AFC East, a brutal division?
The AFC East is going to be brutal, yeah. I do. I think it's like everything else. To me, it's pretty simple for them. I think they're going to be better on defense. They've changed their strategy. And Vic Fangio's really, he's a defensive savant.
Yeah.
Offensively, to me, it's pretty simple.
Keep Tua upright. Keep him vertical.
Yeah. When he's upright, I think he's very good. But every time he drops back to throw now, I think you kind of go like this. You're looking through splayed fingers. And the other thing is, which they didn't run the ball really well. And McDaniel came from the 49ers. And I thought for sure, there'll be a much better running team. And I really like the way the 49ers play offense, because I think that's the way you got to win in the NFL. You got to, you've got to be able to slug it out a little bit. And their run game has just been awful. So certainly a good run game would probably help Tua, but I think it all comes down to Tua. They got those, between the Hill and Waddle. Just throw them the ball, they can outrun everybody.
Right. Well, Joe Zagacki, appreciate the time, man. Have a great year with the Hurricanes. Hopefully we'll see you guys in the ACC title game, maybe a Florida State-Miami second coming of that game. That'd be awesome for the state of Florida, and we really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great year, Joe, and we'll be right back on the Powers on Sports and Florida Football Insider simulcast.